What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Tool World, the place where we talk everything Taekwondo. We recently had our situational awareness seminar, which I think turned out really awesome. And looking forward into the future, we're going to be having a Tool 3 seminar that's going to be most likely virtual. We'll see as we get closer to the date. And that's going to be around July, and that covers Yogo through Chengmu. Now also we're planning for a big seminar kind of summit in the month of October. And so we're going to have a lot of instructors helping out and lots of opportunity to learn not only just about patterns and techniques, but different aspects of Taekwondo that you guys might be interested in.
Sounds good.
So this week we're going to be discussing what exactly?
You're asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you.
Well, I think we're going to talk a little bit about that power. How do you generate power? Obviously, we know power is generated horizontally and vertically. Mm-hmm. And, just to roughly go back over that, basically horizontal movements, like if you're stepping forward, there's power generated there. And when you go up and down, that moving your body, going up and down helps with that power generation. So I thought we talk a little bit about what does that all mean? Is there other aspects than just this up and down movement? And obviously, how does a body move in general? Mm-hmm. Your thoughts on that? You want to kick that off?
The body movement shouldn't be like, let's say I was going into it, not just a stance, but whether I'm throwing a ball, hitting a baseball, kicking, the foot is going to have to move throughout the technique. So it can't remain static. I think you hear that a lot when people are sparring. Say, light on your feet. And that doesn't necessarily mean bouncing up the whole time. That just means staying on the balls of your feet, moving, and not staying static.
Yes, totally agree. I thought you were going to talk a little bit about sine wave, but you're absolutely right. Not being static and pivoting on the ball of the foot is kind of important as well. It really the principles of eyes, hands, feet, breath together comes together at one moment in time. Mm-hmm. And so that means, like, if you think about patterns and you step forward and you execute a technique, everything has to stop together at that moment in time. But in between, mm-hmm. the feet probably is moving. Mm-hmm. And so to give you an example of like the end of Wanyo, where you go from L stance, you're in a guarding block and you step and do the other guarding block, your feet doesn't actually stop, or I see sometimes students put their foot down and both feet flat down the ground. That's like a stance. Mm-hmm. It's like a closed stance, and then they execute the next technique. Mm-hmm. It actually is where one foot is up and one foot is down when they change. However, I think if you look at the stances and the way the foot moves, it's not always exactly like that. So for instance, if I'm in a parallel stance and I step forward into a left walking stance, that right foot actually has to pivot 25 degrees, not mm-hmm. more than 25 degrees. Mm-hmm. But that only happens at the moment of impact. So as you set that foot down, that turns, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's a key element of the power itself. It's that torquing, it's that rotation, and it also twists the hip a little bit. And I noticed that a little bit yesterday in class as we were doing some fundamental drills and watching the students. Mm-hmm. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree.
Well, it kind of brings up a question that I have. I've been thinking about this, and I've kind of explained it a little bit in class about this whole concept where the foot is not static, it's dynamic, it's moving. Mm-hmm. So for instance, if you're in a sitting stance and you're doing 4 fist punches, right? Mm-hmm. And so we use sine wave. It goes up, down, up, right, down, so on and so forth, and you mm-hmm. execute the techniques. Eyes, hands, feet, breath together at the same time. At that moment of impact, it must stop, right? However, when you look at that particular technique and your feet is there, so it's actually just feet. Now everything is eyes, hands, breath together. So the foot is already there. It's not moving with the whole body. So in between movements, I kind of think in between movements is that it's supposed to be dynamic. So in a way, I'm not saying that you should like rotate the feet too much, but in a way, the feet is kind of moving along. In a way, if you think about it, the feet doesn't have to stay right there. It only has to be in the sitting stance at the moment of time, at the point of contact. So is it okay to rotate the feet and then stop? I think yes. I think it can be that. I don't know how much you should rotate it or how much you should move it, but I think it doesn't have to be static. I know it's a kind of radical idea, I guess.
Yeah.
No one's really talked about that. I think I'm the only one that talks about that.
I think you are too.
Maybe we'll get more comments on that one.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. I guess my thoughts on that is that I do agree that sometimes the feet do need to move. Like if I was in a parallel stance and then I go into a walking stance, that back foot's going to pivot. I could see that.
Well, the pivoting of the foot helps with the hip rotation.
Right.
And so that's where you get that kind of power as well. And if you look at like people that do, let's say, sitting stance and they go up on the ball of the foot, that helps with that twisting, that rotating, that wind up, right? That's kind of why I kind of say that.
Right.
You also you'll also see that like in walking stance, and you like in Dosan, you do a high side block with the outer form and then you execute a punch. Sometimes you just see the heel go up and down, but I kind of teach it a little bit different, where I kind of rotate my hips because I want to get my hip involved. So in order to get my hip involved, I've got to rotate that back foot a little bit forward and then execute so that the hip twists a little bit. And that is actually a concept in General Che's book about you got to move the bigger muscles first so that the smaller muscles will then catch up. And he does talk a little bit about hip rotation, right? That jerking of the hip. I'm just kind of saying, not really. I think that it should be more dynamic, and it has a lot to do with the wind up and trying to get that hip involved. Otherwise, it's just the feet stays there, and then what are you going to do with your hip? I mean, maybe not a lot of hip rotation. But if I'm going to remove that hip, I've actually kind of need to move the feet a little bit.
Right.
That's kind of what I'm saying.
I see. All right, well, let us know your thoughts
Send us a note.
Send us a note on Facebook. But thanks for jumping into another Tool World podcast. Make sure to leave a like, share it with all your friends, and thanks for jumping in. Don't forget to be safe.
Keep training.
And we'll see you guys next week.
Take one.